Well, another week has started, and now we're in John chapter 11. I feel certain God has spoken to you in chapters 1 through 10. Um, so far, I've not had a single day where God didn't show up and provide insight, speak to me, and give me things to think about and ponder and stretch and grow. And so, John chapter 11 is the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead, and a lot of different interesting things that happened there. As I was reading about Martha, I was thinking, is Martha the first person who actually believed that Jesus could raise somebody from the dead among his closest followers? That was interesting, something to think about. And of course, her faith wavered a little bit as she talked to Jesus about Lazarus dying. But what stood out to me starts in verse 47. And I think about the fact that, okay, 2 miles from Jerusalem, this guy dies. He's been dead 4 days. He's buried. People have come from Jerusalem to comfort the family. They would often grieve for 7 days along with the family. And so these people would come from Jerusalem. They're there. The family's grieving. And then Jesus comes and brings him out of the grave. They take the grave clothes off. He's alive. I mean, that's just not something that happens every day. But notice what happens in verse 47. Well, and let me back up. John records that some people, some of the Jews believed in him because of the resurrection. I'm thinking, how does everybody not believe in him? I mean, what else does he need to do? He just raised a man from the dead. That doesn't happen very often. And yet some believe. But what some did is they ran straight to Jerusalem and told the religious leaders, hey, guess what? Jesus just brought a guy back to life, and everybody's freaking out over it, and he's gaining even more followers. And here's what the religious people's response was, verse 47. So the chief priests and the Pharisees convened the Sanhedrin. They got all the religious people together and were saying, what are we going to do since this man is doing so many signs? If we let it, if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. That was their response. Not, can you believe a guy was dead and now he's alive? There was no debate about maybe Jesus is the Messiah. There was no discussion about that. And then in verse 57, we're told that with Passover going on and all these Jews gathering in Jerusalem, that the religious leaders had made it public. If you see Jesus or find out where he's at, let us know because we're going to arrest him. That's their response. Literally, Jesus just raised a man from the dead. There's no debate about what that means. Jesus has already crossed the line by healing people on the Sabbath, or not being part of their religious country club. And so this is their response. We got to snuff him out. If we don't, everybody's going to start believing in him. And that was their response. And so you say, well, what does that mean? I mean, what's the practical implications of that? Uh, I think for me, it's that we can miss, right? So we can miss what is right under our noses. We can miss God's activity as these religious people did. God did his greatest work through Jesus, and yet the people who should have recognized it didn't. And I don't want that to happen to me. I don't I don't want to miss what God's doing because of my preconceived notions. And that was what happened to them. Their preconceived notions about the Messiah kept them from acknowledging Jesus as the Messiah. Um, and so in my respond time, I said, God, I don't want to justify any position that is unpleasing to you. Forgive me for all the times I ignored what you were doing, or God forbid, maybe even worked against what God was doing. You say, how could you do that, preacher? Well, if God is trying to reach someone and he's using me in my life, both the words that I say and how I live my life, I can get in the way of that. Whereas someone might see the reflection of Christ or the fruits of the Spirit in me, if I'm not living the way I should, I could easily thwart God's plan to reach them through me. So I don't want to be opposing God in anything. These religious leaders opposed Jesus, even though he had just raised a man who was sick and died, raised him back to life. Instead of praising God for what had happened, instead of taking pause and reevaluating who is Jesus and what are the implications, instead they said, we got to snuff this man out because everybody's starting to believe in him. And they went public with this, in my opinion, asinine position. Hey, if y'all see Jesus, let us know, we're going to arrest him. That was their response. Kind of speaks to the depravity of human beings, how off we can be, how off our thinking can be. And these were religious people, people who supposedly followed Moses in the Old Testament. And this is where they landed. Just reminds me that at any given time, I could be off track. I could miss out on what God's doing. So my prayer is that not happen. I'm sure something different spoke to you. Maybe the faith of Martha, maybe the miracle, maybe the fact that Jesus said they're going to see what I'm going to do, raising him to life, and the disciples are going to believe in me. We hear that again. They're going to believe I really am who I say I am. There's a lot of things that might be a focused thought for you in John chapter 11, but that was for me today, and that's what I want to ponder throughout the day. So, John chapter 12. I'll see you there.